Peasants and farmers. History. Social studies. Question and answer. 1. Explain briefly what the open field system meant to the rural people in 18th century England. Look at the system from the point of view of 1. A rich farmer. 2. Laborer. 3. A peasant woman. Answer. 1. As the price of wool increased, rich farmers wanted to increase its production. Therefore, they began to privatize the best part of the common land and open fields for themselves. This was done to ensure that their ships would get good fodder. They also began to drive out poorer farmers, disallowing them from using common land for grazing. Second, for the poor laborer, the common lands were essential for survival. They used to live without landowners, doing a number of odd jobs for them in return for boarding and lodging and a small pay. However, when the open field system began to disappear, laborers were paid wage only at harvest time. This left them at mercy of rich landowners and farmers. For peasant women, the open field system was a good way of community living wherein everything was shared between the rich and the poor. They would use the common land for grazing their cattle, gathering fruits and collecting firewoods. However, all these activities were negatively affected because of the disappearance of open fields. 2. Explain briefly the factors which led to the enclosure in England. Answer. The factors which led to the enclosure in England were increasing population, and due to it increasing demand of food grains and the other things led to the enclosure in England. The rising prices of agricultural products such as wool, wheat, milk, fruits, etc. also played a role as a factor in promoting enclosure in England. Industrialization and wars need made food grains prices soar, making it necessary to take steps to increase its production. In 19th century, enclosures were seen as necessary to make long-term investment on land and plan crop rotation to improve the soil. Enclosure also allowed the richer landowners to expand the land under their control and produce for the market. 3. Why were threshing machines opposed by the poor in England? Answer. Threshing machines were opposed by the poor in England because they thought that these machines will deprive workmen of their livelihood. They believed that with the help of the machines, the richer farmers and big landlords will encourage enclosure movement. The commodity distributed among rich farmers and poor farmers, laborers, peasants, women would have to struggle for their jobs and they would be jobless. Who was Captain Swing? What did the name symbolize or represent? Answer. Captain Swing was a mythic name used in threatening the letters by the workmen against the uses of threshing machines by rich farmer. The name symbolized anger or unhappiness of the laborer against the use of the threshing machine by rich farmer or big land owners. 5. What was the impact of the westward expansions of settlers in the USA? Answer. The westward expansions of settlers in the USA led to a complete annihilation of American Indians who were pushed westwards down the Mississippi River and then further west beyond that. They fought back but were defeated. Their villages were burnt and cattle destroyed. Also, with the cultivations of land for agriculture purpose, all grass and trees were raised. This led to terrible dust storms and blizzards in the 1930s, causing much death and destruction. 6. What were the advantages and disadvantages of the use of mechanical harvesting machine in the USA? Answer. The advantages of this use of mechanical harvesting machine in the USA were the price of wheat was high and demand limitless. These new machines allowed farmers to quickly clear tracks, break up the soil, remove the grass and prepare the ground for cultivation. The work could be done within a shorter time period and with a lesser number of laborers. With power-driven machine, 4 men could plug seed and harvest 2,000 to 4,000 hectares of wheat in a season. However, there were some disadvantages for the poor farmer too. They were thrown out of their jobs and they lost their means of livelihood. Many of them bought these machines too, but it adversely affected them as the machines were expensive, and once the demand crossed its limit, there was enough surplus grain in the market. Thus, farmers needed to pay back the loan they had taken from banks to buy these machines, and the farmers had no money. 7. What lessons can be drawn from the conversions of the countryside in the USA from a bread basket to a dust bowl? Answer. The expansion of wheat agriculture in the Great Plains created the dust bowl. The American of land of plenty had turned it into a nightmare. We need to learn a lesson from this. The use of land is good, but overuse of land is bad. We need to realize that land is a precious natural resource which need to be preserved and conserved. It serves as warning signs against the exploitative use of land for commercial purpose, only leads to degradations and depletion. This gives rise to serious consequences. We must realize that we need to respect the ecological conditions of each region and work towards sustainable development and look after our earth. 8. Write a paragraph on why the British insisted on farmers growing opium in India. Answer. The British insisted on farmers growing opium in India to balance their trade with China. Tea became extremely popular in England, and by 1830, over 30 million pounds of tea was being imported from China. The British could buy tea from China only by paying in billion. Hence, there was nothing that England could offer to these Chinese in exchange for tea except money. Opium was used in Chinese medicines, but was banned for the use due to its addictivity qualities. The British started an illegal opium trade, and by 1839, there were an estimated 20 million opium smokers in China. All the supplied opium came from India, and it formed an easy, cheap way to pay for the tea imported from China. 9. Why were Indian farmers reluctant to grow opium? Answer. The Indian farmers were reluctant to grow opium due to the crop had to be grown on the best land, on fields that lay near the villages and were well manured. This land was usually used for if opium was grown on fertile and well manured land, then pulses would have to be grown on less fertile land, and yield will not be good in qualities as well as quantity. The cultivation of opium was difficult and time consuming as the plant required looking after. As a consequence, the cultivators will not have time to look after their other produce. The farmers had to pay the rent for their land and to the landlords. This rent was very high. The cultivators owned no land. Finally, the price the government paid for the opium produce was very low and would provide the farmers with no profit. If you like the video, don't forget to press the like button and subscribe the channel for more videos. Thank you.